Hi everyone, welcome to Diary of a Professional Tennis Coach, coming all the way from the very nice Beijing China Open tournament. And today we're joined by one of the head stringers here, Richard, who is going to give us a little bit more information about the stringing process here at the tournament, how it works, and then talk a little bit about our lovely ERT 300, because I know it's something you use when you're stringing rackets.
I do. I've been using it for years, and I'm very, very familiar with it because I helped do all the videos of how to use it and why to use it as a stringer. So it's something that any stringer who is looking to be able to give the best possible result to any player needs an ERT, or needs a unit that can actually measure the dynamic tension. So with that, it gives a certain reading, which isn't equivalent to a kilo.
Yep.
But because there's different parts that are going to affect it. One is the stringer, the machine, the type of racket, the string, all of that, the gauge.
Yep.
So, for instance, this racket here, let's say strung by me on a head machine, as we're using here at the China Open, with these strings, which are Alu Power at, say, 25 kilos, will be different than if it was strung on a Wilson machine or any other brand, or a Yonex. So that is unique to me stringing it, and that will give me a number, and that will give me a DT. And each stringer, depending on the technique, will get a higher or lower. So what you're actually interested in by using this is the end result, because you have two things, one which is called reference tension and another which is called actual tension. So reference tension might be the 25 kilos that you asked me for to do this racket. Put it on the machine, 25 kilos. Yep. What's actually in the frame, once I've finished putting the strings in, tying off, all the rest of it, is always lower. So you have reference tension and actual tension. And this little doodah measures it.
Okay.
So that will give us a number. So this racket at 25 kilos might give us 35 DT. So when you go to, say, Shanghai next week or in the future, then you're going to take out all the variables.
Yep.
Because in the end, the player, what they're interested
Consistency
in is what's in the actual frame.
Yep.
So it doesn't matter, whereas here in Beijing, we put it at 25 kilos, me stringing it, or in Shanghai, they've got to put it at 26 or 27 kilos to get the same DT. The player obviously just wants that string bed stiffness, and that's what they're used to.
What's the highest tension you've been getting from which players are having the highest racket number, and what about the lowest?
Right, well, the Norwegian girl, can't remember her name.
Yes.
37 kilos, because that's all the machine goes to.
Yep.
So 37 kilos with 10% pre-stretch. That takes it up to about 40. Around the world, and that's the highest, but she always is the highest.
She always is, yep.
That's because that's as far as the machine goes.
Right.
I actually, back in the 90s, used a machine that went up to 45 kilos, and that I managed to do a racket for Roberto Carretero, who still does some commentating now. He used to play then, and he would string at 45 kilos.
But that would break a lot of modern rackets, wouldn't it? Wouldn't it just snap the frame? Or are they able to be...
Most rackets, they could take that.
Okay.
Yeah, they tend to be able to. So the highest is 37 kilos.
Yeah.
And the lowest, as usual, is our
Manarino?
Adrian Manarino at 10 kilos. So 22 pounds. It's one of the things that we have to do is so you've got everything at 10, but the bottom cross we've got to put it in at 20, because otherwise his doodah pops out.
Wow.
Vibration dampener. That's
unbelievable. And are you finding there's a trend? Because I know for us with Magda, over the years it's been, we definitely have started to drop our tension, and we found, for a number of reasons, one, it's obviously giving us more power, but two, actually a little bit more feel on the ball, because the ball stays on the racket a little bit longer in the string bed.
Yeah.
Do you find any trends in that way?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I tend to equate it to a lot of the players feeling a little bit on their elbow, wrist or shoulder, because we are talking about a monofilament string, so the elasticity element of it isn't that high.
Yeah.
So it is harder on the arm. So the lower the tension, the better. There's less shock on off-center hits, whatever it is. And the one thing that you do notice with Mannarino, with Adrian's racket, is there's no snapback. If they move to one side. They don't snap back because they're too loose.
Yeah.
So he's not actually getting. You would think that at lower tension you'd get more snapback, you'd get more spin.
Yeah.
His, they're actually moving and staying moved. So you'll actually see a curve on the strings when he brings it in to have it restrung. So that's one. Let's say that's a negative of using such a low tension. They do actually. You're not getting that snapback to generate more spin.
Okay, and because as you'll notice on this racket, this is Magda's racket, so we have some weight on here, on both sides, and there's some under the frame bumpers, just because we're trying to get a consistent. Obviously all the rackets when we get them delivered in Yonex are great, but we have them all customized. Are you doing that stuff as well?
Yes,
here?
we do.
Are you doing customization?
Yeah, we do. We've done some for Tamara Korpash. We've looked at some of her. We did some for Altman. I believe we looked at some rackets for him where we just we had to sort that out. There was a couple of people who've actually they wanted to try a little bit a change in their swing weight and their static weight.
Sure.
So that's just something. But you can see here it's at 3 and 9, which adds a little bit more stability.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit more torsional stability. Up the top, swing weight. Then is more on the plow through.
Actually, that would be my last two questions. First would be, could you explain the difference, because we've been playing around with this recently, between the weight of the racket and the swing weight, and then also talk a little bit about, because you're doing stuff, stringing and customization outside of the China Open, so could you just first of all give people an explanation of what the swing weight is, because that's something we've really been working on more than the weight of the racket.
Well, swing weight is the dynamic balance. So let's say we've got a static balance, which is no movement at all. So that is the balance point of this racket, basically. There's 50% of the weight on this side, 50% on that side. But if we were to look at, let's say, the swing weight, we could have all the weight here and all the weight here, and the balance point is still in the same place.
Yeah.
But we could have the weight here and equidistant there, and you would still have the same balance point. But the difference is, if all the weight was here and here, you'd be able to move that really, really easily.
Yes.
But if you had the weight here was polarized from there and there, it's going to take longer to get the movement going. But once it's in movement, then it goes.
Yes.
And you're going to have a lot more power with the weight further away from the grip. So we normally actually say 10 centimeters from the butt, which is from the butt cap, which is actually the hand.
Yep.
So the measurement's taken from there upwards.
Okay.
And then the swing weight that you use is always, let's say you would maximize it so you get as much power without slowing the swing down.
Okay.
Once you go too far where you can't accelerate anymore, where you're not being able to move the racket how you would normally use it, then you've actually gone the swing weight's a little bit too far.
Too much.
You can bring it back.
Okay.
So now that's the swing weight, and now obviously we have twist weights as well, torsional stability. So you can actually have. So we now don't match frames to 3 parameters. We actually do it to 4. So we have the static weight, static balance, dynamic balance, and twist weight. So how you can make a racket, depending on where you put the extra weight, you can actually make it more stable, so that it's often you get a racket that trembles a little bit. You can actually make it where it's more solid when you're actually hitting it, so you can add stability to the racket face.
That's interesting.
So it's and you can, and one thing is, sweet spot follows the weight. So depending on where you're putting it, so if a player hits slightly higher, you can actually move the sweet spot up a little bit. So
as a coach, that's something that we like. We prefer, I don't want Magda hitting the ball in the middle. I would prefer her hitting it a little bit above center, because that part of the racket moves quicker than this part of the racket. So if we can have her hitting her serves up here, that's ideal for us.
Yeah, I mean, I often see, if I see a player is shanking the ball or coming through too quickly, you can actually change the velocity of the swing slightly by changing the distribution of the weight. So I mean, swing weight is the distribution of the weight.
Okay.
Basically, it's dynamic balance.
Interesting.
So,
Thank you. That's great. Please tell us about your endeavours before we finish.
well, my name's Richard Parnell, and these are all Parnell knots, which is something that came about in Wimbledon years ago. Someone filmed me doing my knot. It was then known as the Parnell knot, and it's pretty much the two most used knots in professional stringing are the Pro knot and the Parnell knot. So at Wimbledon, there were the two knots that were authorised, and anyone wanted to use something else, we would do that. So Parnell knots, what did I do? But what I did is about 2.5 years ago, we were looking at the stringing associations that existed, and we thought that we would try and make something that was more in tune with the modern world, take it to the next level, find out what already existed, how we could improve it, and then create something unique and global. So we created the Global Racket Stringers Association, which is GRSA International, which you can just about see
Over the
there
muscle.
with.
Over the
That's,
muscle.
oh yes,
Yeah.
obviously.
Yeah.
And we have instructors in different places in the world. So here in Beijing, we have our local guy and the guy who looks after the whole of Asia, who is based in Singapore. But we've already had 2 workshops here in China, one in Nanjing and one in Beijing.
Okay.
We're looking at another one at the end of the month, and basically we're looking at stringer education. So in the stringer education, even for coaches, we have an agreement with PTR, for instance. If you're a PTR coach, you can actually have a special discount on online stringing courses.
Okay.
So, and with that, we've always thought that a coach, if they have more knowledge about strings, stringing, racket, all of that side, they'll be able to offer better advice to their students and
Completely
players.
agree.
So that's why we partnered with PTR in the US as their official certifying body, and we're putting it out everywhere to try and further stringer education. So that's our goal, and we're trying to. Well, we've been at it for 2.5 years,
great.
and it's gathering momentum.
Great. Yeah, I think it's a really good idea to help educate coaches on this thing, and I think everyone listening will find that real interesting. So,
Good.
thank you so much for your time.
You're most welcome.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.